thinking to myself that I was pretty happy that this election campaign is beginning. Now, this is not an advertisement. This is not a warning to my adversaries, but they shouldn't have done this in the spring. Now we are absolutely ready to take on this campaign. We're happy to see this begin. Now, this is a serious environment because the President of the United States against Canada and Mexico and all its trade partners is bringing in policies that multiply the threats and are spreading fear, and he seems to be loving that. He seems to love to see that people are afraid. And in addition to the trade issues, of course, we cannot forget about the license that he has given Israel to again bomb Gaza, and the license that he seems to be giving to Russian dictators who are hitting at Ukraine. And people here in Quebec are afraid to lose their jobs. They're afraid to lose their business. And the owner of a dairy farm may be wondering today whether a new trade agreement, which I can't possibly call a free trade agreement at this time, with that agreement, whether he'll still be able to operate a dairy farm. So in this environment full of trade threats, obviously that will be at the center of this campaign. And the issue is about who? What are we going to talk about? Obviously, we'll talk about the auto industry, oil from the West, and in the middle of this campaign, and I'm not sure that's been the case thus far, we will need to talk about Quebec companies, Quebec workers, seniors in Quebec, and those people will have to sense that in the context of a potential negotiation, we are offering them a sense of security that's well documented and well built. Now, in that context, I feel like disposing of that issue, the issue of Canadian sovereignty. You know, the freedom and the economy of Canada are very precious to all Canadians, just as the freedom and the economy of Quebec are very precious to Quebecers. And we cannot avoid saying that we're talking about two different nations here. And I think we need to behave like allies. I remind you that Quebec and Canada can be the allies of Quebec. And there is a current in Europe right now which prompts us to act as allies to other countries that are dealing with Donald Trump. And I still call him a president because in spite of that, I don't think we can call him the President of the United States and be too familiar in that regard. But allies are equals. Allies make sure that the members of the alliance are heard and listened to. And I'm not hearing today what is needed or what it will take for Quebec to be in good hands if we entrust our destiny. I won't try to minimize the importance of a negotiation here, but if we limit our destiny to questions taken by others. In other words, why not ensure that decisions about Quebecers will be made by other Quebecers? And having that in mind, I think it's absolutely critical that subjects that have not been addressed thus far, mentioned here and there. Oh, no, don't worry about that kind of thing. But I want to remind people of the importance for the prosperity and the jobs in Quebec, the importance of lumber, the importance of supply management. How can we not focus on the importance of arts and culture in Quebec? They define who we are, and they have incredible economic weight, including all the other sectors. Aluminum, of course, which which exists practically only in Quebec because the U.S. produces very little. Coastal fisheries in the Gaspé and the Magdalen Islands. Strategic minerals. The phosphate reserves, the most significant ones, are in Quebec. And transportation, electrification. We're not talking about that. We're talking about bringing Western oil across the country, thinking that will be good for Quebec, but there's been no demonstration of that thus far. And I don't think Quebec should get involved in that very costly project. I think people will have to admit that it will be very costless in terms of the environment. Clean energy, the alternative to the pipeline they want to put across Quebec, the aerospace industry, which is emblematic in Quebec because it is very fully integrated in supply chain, as much as the auto industry. You can talk about the other one when you talk about the first one. And I think it's important to remember that. And I want to remember that we want to take a positive attitude and a cooperative attitude. And I do hope that Quebecers will appreciate this, perhaps because in this third election for the Bloc, people can be more serene knowing what we've done thus far. And people speaking for the Bloc are well known and of good character, but I want to say that I don't think that fear will work with Quebecers this time. Quebecers are in a situation where fear doesn't scare them anymore. Quebecers and Quebec will be moving ahead by remaining a nation built on the French language, on its specific values, and its model of welcoming immigrants to Quebec. And now we're seeing the spectrum of the Century Initiative come forward, and that's no reason to be happy. And I think the same has to do with the fact that Quebec is very different, and we need to be able to express ourselves and be prosperous and be partners on the condition that we are able to express our own voice to Canada and Mexico, and if there's a new agreement, such as the one we have with Europe. So we are very enthusiastic in seeing finally the beginning of this election campaign, which is fortunately happening in spring, and I would like us to be together in saying at the end of the campaign and throughout the campaign that in spite of all that and for all that, I am choosing Quebec. Thank you.
Nous allons maintenant passer à la période des questions. Une question principale, une question de suivi. Simplement vous nommer de même que le nom de votre média.
Bonjour, M. Blanchet, Michel Sabat, la presse canadienne.
La presse canadienne.
Avez-vous, comme votre candidat Denis Trudel,
like your candidate Denis Trudel, more afraid of the Liberals than Mr. Trump? Well, we're not an authoritarian party. There's a wide diversity of opinions in our party. In his writing, he may be more concerned about the Liberals. He'll do his own analysis, and there are other writings where they'll be more afraid of conservatives. I mean, we're not afraid because we're going to be gobbled up by everyone. Everyone's making their own calculations, and I think each person has her own opinion or his own opinion. And at the end of this exercise, generally, we come out stronger and smarter. But do you sense that the Liberals are taking votes away from you? Why not launch your campaign in the national capital of Quebec? Well, I'm not launching my campaign. I'm responding to the launch of the campaign, which is starting tomorrow in Quebec City. I knew you would like that. Having said that, The Liberals cannot take votes from the Bloc because blocs belong to no one. Votes belong to the voters when they put an X on their paper, and as long as the X is not on the paper, there is no vote. So we will bring in votes because people will hear from us, they will see us, and we hope to inspire their confidence as we do in every campaign, and we'll see at the end who has power or the balance of power. Radio-Canada, you're saying that Quebecers will not cede to the argument, the fear argument. Are you accusing Mr. Carney of engaging in a campaign of fear? No, I'm speaking in general, but I can go back to that point as well. Generally, what we've seen on the U.S. is mainly intimidation and the stupidity of the 51st state and so forth. And at the beginning, and Mr. Trudeau said this, what was the term he said? He said the U.S. wanted to absorb Canada. And I found that to be ridiculous, but we sensed there was a desire to use people's insecurity to say, okay, come and support our hero. You don't know who he is, but it's going to be fine. So we're not as much in that dynamic now. You know, Quebec has seen people use fear before. And so, no, I'm not worried about that argument. And generally, we bring forward reason in the space of, in the presence of fear. Now, you're talking about the ballot box issue, about who will stand up against Trump, but then you're talking about who will protect the Quebec economy. Don't you think it will be tough to make that argument compared to Mr. Carney saying he will cut taxes? Isn't that more of a sub-question? You're pretty limited in a way. Well, there are a couple of things I want to say about that. If there was a sub-ballot box question, it would be as though you're saying, well, that's already been decided. In other words, is it Poiliev or is it Carney? It's as though you're asking me to say whether I prefer to exist between the other two. No, we're not basing our campaign on who's the nicest or the best or the smartest or who goes to Mass. That's not what a campaign is about. A campaign is about ideas. Everyone has their own personal freedom and their own personal preferences. The campaign must be based on concrete issues. When people say, okay, well, don't worry about don't worry about supply management. Now, Mr. Carney is taking pieces of slogans as well. But what we need are concrete measures. And you'll see that every single day in this campaign, the Bloc will come forward with specific proposals, well-documented proposals, specific measures, which I hope will force the colleagues from the other political parties to develop what they're proposing, because I'm very wary, and I invite Quebecers to also be wary of giving people a blank check. Elect me without I've committed to doing anything in particular, and afterwards I'll do whatever I want, because I'll be able to say I never said I wasn't going to do that. And with two adversaries, Mr. Poiliev, we don't know what his real platform is, even though we've seen him skating on the same ice for some time. But Mr. Carney, really, we don't know anything about him. We know very little about him to say, it's okay, people said you were good, so we're going to fight for you. Now, of course, Quebecers have the right to do that, but my job and the job of everyone here and others who are not here today is really to force Mr. Carney and Mr. Poiliev to reveal a platform on which people can make choices. I remember my first years in politics in '87 with the return of Jacques Parizeau, who wasn't trying to get a free mandate without saying what he was going to do. He talked about a political program and he introduced it and enforced it. And that brought us to power in Quebec. and brought us very, very close to independence. Hello, Mr. Blanchet, Le Devoir. How are you? Yes, I'm very, very well, thank you. I have a question about a threat that you identified in your comments earlier, the tariffs from the U.S. In such a context, don't you think that voters will be more inclined to vote for a national party to stand up to Trump and his threats than for a party like the Bloc Québécois? Well, we are what more national party is there than the Bloc? Well, you're not present across the country. Yes, that's true, because the Quebec nation is not present across the country. But the Bloc Québécois is the most national party that exists in Canada. But once again, I mean, that's not even original. If what is being proposed is good for Quebec, we will cooperate, and we may even cooperate to the point where they can't do anything without us. Because it is possible, there are people who are smarter than me who are saying that we may end up in a minority parliament and who think that we might hold the balance of power, not 25, but 40 of us. So if Quebecers give themselves that opportunity, and the certainty that Quebec's economic interests, which are very different from those of the rest of Canada, just as its culture is, Quebecers will say, well, we have nothing to lose to have our own voice that will ensure that our interests are protected. But can we and do we want to take the risk of not protecting ourselves against the risk that Mr. Carney or Mr. Poilievre, who today mentioned nothing about economic issues in Quebec? When I say that I am, when I speak, I know I'm speaking to thousands of Quebecers. When I talk about supply management, I'm speaking to thousands of Quebecers and farmers. When I talk about the aerospace industry, I know I'm speaking to thousands of workers in that industry. So it's something very concrete. And I'm talking about real people who are afraid of their jobs, and nobody is saying to them today, oh, don't worry, we're going to look specifically after you, except the Bloc Québécois, a very national party. I also want to talk about sovereignty. I heard the word pronounced only once, but it was in relation to Canada. Yes, but I used the word independence as well, just once. And so I'm wondering, are you going to be talking about Quebec sovereignty during your campaign?
Il n'y a pas personne qui a fini sa troisième année B qui doute que je suis indépendant. C'est sûr qui se soit
no one doubts independence for Quebec. But if you think that the Bloc Québécois is going to organize a referendum on that, well, the fact is that as people who support independence, we have a chance to ensure that the economic system is something that works for us, because Donald Trump has shown the people that he promised a whole bunch of stuff, that he's going to do certain things, because he doesn't want to lose control. Now, we want to ensure that those midterm elections are behind us, and that activists in the Bloc can help the Parti Québécois to elect sovereigntists, and once there are sovereigntists in Quebec, I imagine that Paul will be establishing his strategy and we will support it. So the people who are in the best position to set the table, I mean, they may be saying, we want Quebecers to lose their jobs, so they'll be angry in order to vote for sovereignty. I've never thought that that was the case. I think people have to have confidence in themselves. They have to be confident in terms of the idea of sovereignty, because they have behaved responsibly. And when the big question comes up, they'll be saying, we're going to trust those people. So our job is to ensure that there is that confidence and that trust inspired.
Your party was leading or dominant in polls in Quebec right up to the resignation of Justin Trudeau, and you seem to have sort of slumped behind the Liberals since then. What will you do to reinsert yourself into this conversation about who is best to tackle Donald Trump's economic threats?
I read Newton. What goes up goes down. If that's good for me, that's good for Mr. Carney. Let's see.
Okay. And you've been talking about pipelines a lot and how they have no place in Quebec. This is not new for you. You've talked about this a lot. Recently, Quebec Premier François Legault started saying that maybe public opinion in Quebec is shifting on this issue, and he would be ready to start talking about pipelines if there is a broader social acceptability on this. Why do you think he started saying this? And I guess, why don't you agree with him? Because it's clear you don't.
There are so many reasons why I do not agree. I can repeat them easily because this is such a bad idea. It came very fast and under the pretext of trade between provinces in Canada. This has nothing to do with trade between provinces in Canada because there was no debate about trade between provinces in Canada when we refused that in 2015. And it's exactly the same project with the same goals. The idea for Western Canada is to unlock Canadian oil and gas in order to have the price of Canadian oil and gas go higher and reach the same level of price as oil and gas from anywhere else in the world. One of the first things that this would do, by the way, is make the gas at the pump more expensive in Quebec because the drum, the barrel will be more expensive here also because they don't give us oil and gas. We pay for it the same price as anybody else does. And we just had a study released showing the enormous price. We're speaking thousands of dollars a year for each family, each household to pay for the damages of climate change, which some people, both other leaders, seem to believe that do not exist, cost nothing. So the idea is, please, help us exploit oil and gas from Western Canada that will give you nothing. And then when the bill comes about the cost of climate change, you will also pay the bill of climate change. There's nothing for Quebec in that. And when you speak about energy, selling energy, for Quebec, it's not from west to east. It's from north to south. And what we sell to our American friends in New England is clean energy, is green energy. And this is much more the future of Quebec than any other form of energy. In 2023, about $30 billion were generously given to the oil and gas industry, which does not need it. 7 of those billions of dollars came from the pockets of families in Quebec. And this money was not spent in our economy, in clean energy, in agriculture or aluminum or lumberwood or innovation, research, high technology. Why would we spend that much money for Western Canada in order to pay twice for the same thing, if not 3 times?